the work. Boom, boom. We do the work. This is our we time to play. We play the streets. We sell clothes. We train the trees. And sell the goods. Yes, we do. We raise the stone. We do the work. This is our home. We do the work. 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 This is our home. We give the day. Yes, Lord. We serve the meal. We give the care. We know the seal. Teach the kids. Man to hand, we do the work. This is our land. We do the work. 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 This is our land. Oh, we do the work. 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 This is our land.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the Labor Forum. You're tuned in to WRFG 89.3 FM here in Atlanta. My name is Diane Mathewitz. I'm a retired auto worker, member of Local 10 of the UAW. Seated next to me in the studio is Paul McClellan. Hi, Paul.
Hi, Diane.
And Paul is a retired MARTA worker, and we both co-host this program every Monday from 4 to 5 here on WRFG, where you can listen on your radio at 89.3 FM, and as well as on a computer at wrfg.org with a mobile device. And of course, you can watch us right now on the Labor Forum YouTube channel. So we will start by letting you know that the opinions expressed on this program may not necessarily be those of the Board of Directors, staff, or volunteers here at WRFG. We do want to thank everyone who attended any event ever that supports WRFG. We are a listener-supported and sponsored radio station. We receive funds from you, our listeners, and we're getting ready for our fall pledge drive. And we want to make sure that you're very much aware that this program and all the programs on WRFG are only able to be broadcast at 100,000 watts and streamed and available on other devices because of your generous support. And we'd like to encourage you to start thinking right now about how much you might be able to contribute and the ways in which you might be able to contribute to the station. And we're going to have a kickoff party and concert on Saturday, the 17th of October. And we hope that as more information comes forward about that, you'll be able to join us that night as well. So let's start with our labor headlines for today, Monday, October 5th. In case you haven't heard, an agreement was reached sometime this morning on the Trans-Pacific Partnership, widely seen as an enormous power grab by transnational corporations, many based in the U.S., to gain access to the markets, resources, and labor of countries in the Pacific Rim. The details of the agreement are still secret, and the Labor Forum will continue to report on this battle to protect worker rights, the environment, access to health care and vital medicines, and all the other issues impacted by the TPP. The Labor Forum applauds Atlanta Jobs with Justice, the American Friends Service Committee, Communication Workers of America, and the Teamsters Union, and all the groups and individuals who rallied, marched, and carried out many forms of direct action during the TPP meetings here in Atlanta from September 30th through October 4th. In other international news, this morning in Paris, a meeting of Air France executives was stormed by workers angered by the company's plan to cut 2,900 jobs by 2017. The job losses include 1,700 ground staff, 900 flight attendants, and 300 pilots. Pictures from the action, which were on the internet, very interesting to see, show the airline's human resources and labor relations chief, his name is Xavier Brosetta, with his shirt ripped off and his tie hanging loosely around his neck as he escapes from the crowd of workers. Brosetta had been outlining the cuts when workers burst into the room waving banners and signs. The Labor Forum has previously reported on strikes by the pilots and other Air France workers, not only protesting the anticipated job cuts, but other attacks on seniority, pensions, vacation time, and other benefits. France, like other capitalist countries, is attempting to uphold corporate profit margins at the expense of the workers who do the work to keep the planes flying. And last week we reported on the contract negotiated between Fiat Chrysler and the UAW. And previously we had interviewed Martha Gravatt, a union activist at a Chrysler plant in Detroit. The results of the rank and file vote were announced at the end of last week. For the first time in 30 years, a national agreement with one of the big three automakers was rejected by the membership. It was an overwhelming vote against the continued existence of a two-tier wage system by a margin of 65% to 35%. Really, it was a vote for union solidarity and union fight back. In some plants, between 80 and 90% voted against the contract. Although Tier 2 workers hired after 2007 were given a substantial pay raise in this proposed contract, it still would take up to 8 years for someone to make the top pay grade, and even then, it would still be less than Tier 1 workers' pay. In other words, while the gap would be somewhat reduced, workers doing the same work would still be paid differently, unequally. What particularly angered the young workers was that the promised cap of 25% of Tier 2 workers on Chrysler's payroll was not part of the deal, denying thousands of workers entry into Tier 1 status. At the same time, Tier 1 workers, those are the workers that had been hired previous to 2007, who hadn't seen a pay raise in 9 years, felt the contract's wage improvements weren't sufficient to make up for the loss of many other benefits sacrificed over the last decade. UAW President Dennis Williams has said negotiations with Chrysler will resume to address the issues raised by the rank and file. Auto workers at Ford and GM are watching closely, as should all working people. Despite the diminished size of the UAW, these auto contracts have significance for the growing fight back against corporate and government austerity plans. And last Monday, we reported on the Antico chain of restaurants being ordered to pay some $330,000 in unpaid wages to its workers. On September 28th, the U.S. Department of Labor announced that the El Potro restaurant in Brookhaven has likewise been ordered to pay workers for back wages for its failure to pay minimum wages and overtime. The amount is $110,000. The restaurant used the same flat biweekly wage system for its servers, bussers, and kitchen staff, a system that appears to be common in many restaurants when looking over the Department of Labor rulings in the Southeast. These are hard jobs requiring fast service, often in hot kitchens, carrying heavy loads and being on one's feet for hours. Congratulations to the workers whose courage and determination brought the illegal practices of their bosses to light. That concludes our labor headlines for today. We're going to move right away into Paul McLennan and his always very informative This Week in Labor History.
Thanks, Diane. On October 4th, 1928, James Foreman was born in Chicago. In the early 1960s, he served as executive secretary of SNCC, the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. Having a fiercely revolutionary vision, He was seen as a major strategist and organizer within the Black freedom movement. He helped plan the 1963 March on Washington and organized Freedom Summer in 1964. While registering voters and organizing protests in the South, he was repeatedly harassed, beaten, and jailed. He once wrote, "Accumulating experiences with Southern law and order were turning me into a full-fledged revolutionary." James Foreman spent his early childhood living with his grandmother on a farm in Marshall County, Mississippi. He later attributed much of his political development to the experience of growing up in the face of grinding rural poverty and Jim Crow segregation. He said his grandmother gave him a sense for justice, while his aunt gave him his intellectual fire. At the age of 6, he returned to Chicago, where he graduated with honors from Englewood High School in 1947. He signed up for the Air Force, a decision he later regretted. He called the armed forces a dehumanizing machine which destroys thought and creativity in order to preserve the economic system and the political myths of the United States. In 1952, he enrolled at the University of Southern California. After being falsely accused of a robbery, he suffered an arrest and a beating by Los Angeles police during his second semester. Foreman then transferred to Roosevelt University in Chicago, where he became a leader in student politics and earned his degree. In late 1960, Foreman went to Fayette County, Tennessee, to assist sharecroppers who had been evicted for registering to vote. That summer, he was jailed with other freedom riders protesting segregated facilities in Monroe, North Carolina. He became actively involved in grassroots organizing with NAACP leader Robert Williams, who advocated armed self-defense against Klan terror. After Foreman's sentence was suspended, he agreed to become executive secretary of SNCC. He moved to Atlanta at the urging of Ella Baker, who had been the Southern Christian Leadership Conference's first executive director. She believed the students, most from Black colleges in the South, and veterans of the sit-in movement, needed a separate organization to call their own. Foreman himself could often be found cleaning the office and liked to say that he wouldn't ask anyone else to do work that he wouldn't do himself. As SNCC's executive secretary from 1961 to 1966, Foreman applied this philosophy and his organizational talents as an administrator to ensure that the SNCC field workers in Mississippi, Alabama, and Georgia were able to do their jobs. With his fellow SNCC workers in Atlanta, he put in long hours coordinating projects, raising money, and communicating with the media to make sure that SNCC could function where it was needed most. At the same time, he invested great faith in SNCC's field staff. The most important lesson he brought into SNCC was a hands-off approach to SNCC's organizing work in the field. Foreman recognized that the central office could not direct the day-to-day activities of local movements. There should be a projection and an organization of indigenous leadership, he said. I mean leadership from the community. Local struggles depended on the actions and the engagement with the people on the ground. The job of the administrative office was to help them by communicating their efforts as broadly as possible and by giving them the money and the tools to get the work done. Foreman criticized the top-down leadership style of Dr. King, which he saw as undermining the development of local grassroots movements. In 1961, he objected to King's involvement in the Albany movement, which SNCC had initiated in Albany, Georgia. A strong people's movement was in progress. The people were feeling their own strength grow, he wrote some years later. I knew how much harm could be done by interjecting the Messiah complex. People would feel that only a particular individual could save them and would not move on their own to fight racism and exploitation. After leaving SNCC, he temporarily moved to Africa to study the liberation movements there. In early 1968, he became the Black Panther Party's Minister of Foreign Affairs and worked to build ties between African Americans and revolutionaries in the Third World. Later in 1968, he joined forces with the League of Revolutionary Black Workers and in April 1969 helped organize the Black Economic Development Conference in Detroit, where Black manifesto and a demand for reparations was adopted. A prolific writer, Foreman wrote many books on the civil rights movement and Black revolutionary theory, including his autobiography, The Making of Black Revolutionaries, which he wrote in 1972. James Foreman died January 10th, 2005, at the age of 76.
Thank you very much, Paul. We'll turn right away to our two guests who are on the telephone, and we want to welcome them to the Labor Forum. So, hi, Joel.
This is Joel.
Oh, Joel, I was told that Joel was on the phone with you, but that's great.
Speaker.
No, we're excited to have you. We've had Joel on the phone before. So we're happy to have you. So what's your last name?
Joel Odom. Odom is my last name, O-D-O-M.
Well, welcome to the Labor Forum. And we asked Joel to see if you could come on air today to talk about the next stage of the Fight for $15 an hour in a union campaign, which has been going on here in Atlanta and around the country now for over 2 plus years, and has achieved really remarkable gains in terms of many people beginning to absolutely understand that $15 an hour is truly a minimum wage. So would you mind telling our listeners a little about yourself?
Well, I am a 36-year-old black male from Atlanta, Georgia. I served in our country's Marine Corps, did 2 tours in Iraq, and I'm a father of 2. And I work for food at KFC.
How long have you been doing that at KFC?
I have been doing it almost a year now. But off and on, my first job was at KFC back in 1989. I was in high school and I started working at KFC. So off and on, I've been working in fast food majority of my life.
All right. So what prompted you then to become involved in the Fight for 15 campaign? How did you hear about it and what have you been doing with it?
I've always known about it, but just, didn't really have the know-how and also the courage to take it on because, I'm only one person. But once I met some of the Fight for 15 workers and they actually told me about the Fight for 15, I wanted to be a part of it. I got tired of just sitting back and, working my butt off, trying to, achieve the American dream that everybody wants. And it's not coming because of the low wages.
Can I ask you, do you get 40 hours a week?
Yes, ma'am. Actually, I got 45 hours this week, and my manager actually put me to the side and was like, "We can't give you these 5 hours overtime. I have to put them on your next trip." And I was like, "Wow, are you serious? I really need that money because, like I said, I have 2 kids I have to feed. I'm living in a 1-bedroom apartment with 3 roommates and no food in the refrigerator, and I'm only making $7.25. So I'm coming to work and I'm working for you guys because I really need the money. Now you're telling me I can't have the money that I actually earn."
I don't know. I'm going to ask maybe some one of our listeners. I don't know that they can do that legally. But we'll have to talk about that a little later because I don't think they can just put your overtime hours on a next check. Does that sound right to you, Paul?
No.
All right. That's clearly one of the things I want to say right off the top of my head, that having a union and having a union contract would make all the difference in the world about what managers do and don't do. So if you wouldn't mind letting us know a little bit about what the next steps here in Atlanta are for the Fight for 15.
Okay, our next steps, we've already organized. We've already got, a lot of individuals already set up and organized with us. And we have a wage board coming up Tuesday, October 27th at the Georgia Capitol building. And we're going to have a forum to where the politicians, our elected officials that we elect, that we vote for, can hear us out. And we're going to explain to them why we need it's already been done in New York. They had a wage board. It governor okayed it, and they got together, and now they're getting 15 an hour. So we can run, and it's like, well, we can do the same thing down here in Georgia, in Atlanta especially. So and that's what it's all about, is getting organized, getting together, and we have a wage board at the Georgia Capitol coming up October 7th. Wednesday.
Do you know the room number? I think it's over in the building across the street from the Capitol.
Yes, it is. It's room CLOB, room 506.
And that's at 2 o'clock?
It's from noon to 12, and I'm urging all low-wage fast workers to come out and support, and that would be all appreciated.
So one of the things that we've had updates and many different low-wage workers on the radio show here at the Labor Forum, and we hope that you'll be able to come back again to let us know not just only what's happening here in Atlanta, but also the successes and the gains and the victories that have been achieved across the country. Now, you mentioned the New York State Wage Board, which specifically says that fast food workers in the state of New York have to get paid $15 an hour. Do you know any more details about that decision, about that ruling?
No, ma'am, I don't know the exact details to that. But like I said, I know they had their stories heard, they're organized, and they got a wage for it in front of the governor and in front of their elected officials, their senators, their state representatives.
And I know here that there's been an attempt to try to get the Atlanta City Council to adopt a $15 an hour minimum wage. Have you been part of those efforts as well?
No, I have not. But at the wage forum that we're going to have Wednesday, we will have our state senators, Vincent Ford and Julie McClain. They will be there. So.
Right, I believe both of them are sponsors of a bill that will come before the Georgia legislature when it convenes in 2016 in January, that will attempt to raise Georgia's minimum wage. So, yeah, so there's a lot of moving pieces here in this fight. Can you talk a little bit about, and I don't mean to put you on the spot, but how is it that when you're at work, you talk to your coworkers to motivate or convince them to step out and fight for this as you have? Because you have 2 kids, and one of the fears that many workers have, of course, is losing a job that, while it doesn't pay what the work that you do, it doesn't pay the worth of your work, it nevertheless does provide you with a paycheck. And so that's a scary proposition, right?
Yes, it is. And, I talk to, the workers as much as I can. And, a lot of them, they come from, like, I'm by myself, I don't have anybody else. I need this job. So most of them are scared. Most of them are, they don't, know anything else, So they're scared. They don't want to, rock the boat, so to speak. But I'm working on them, and they see me in the movement, and and I'm giving them updates on certain things that I can talk about. And I'm working on 2 of them. I pretty much got them to where they're probably going to come to the wage board with me Wednesday, to see. And but like I said, a lot of them are scared. A lot of them are female. They come from they're no fathers in the home, so it's just them by themselves. And like I said, they don't really talk about they've been working for this company for so many years. It's like I have one guy, he's probably going to come to the wage, but he's been working for KFC for 10 years, and then he makes $8 an hour.
Oh my gosh. I'm sorry. Listeners, do you not feel the way I do that is an absolute crime? It's just not possible that somebody could have contributed that much profit and value to a company and get so little in return. I know Paul is seated next to me, and he has a question for you.
We've talked about this issue a lot, and one of the words that comes up is dignity. That this can't just be reduced to dollars and cents. It's about respect, and I'm wondering if you could say a little bit about that.
Yes, I'm you know, respect does go a long way with me because I'm the type I'm going to give you respect, and I'm going to respect in return. You know, the respect value, the respect factor at work, they're not respecting us, period, because they're starting us off with $7.25 and we're on our feet for 7-8 hours every day, you know, leaping and running. And I don't think they respect us enough. That's why we're fighting right now. That's why we're fighting right now on the fight for 15.
So, Darrell, we just have like about a minute or so left. Is there some contact information that you can give to our listeners? Because I know that there are many people out there. Atlanta has the biggest inequality gap between rich and poor. And so that means there are literally tens and tens of thousands of people in a situation just like yours. And if everyone was to get up and fight back, we would absolutely be able to turn this situation around where workers have the rights and dignity and power that they deserve. So can you give some contact information for the Fight for 15 in a Union to our listeners?
Yes, I can. If anybody wants to join the fight or give any more information on this fight, they can go to our Facebook page, and it's ATL Raise Up on Facebook. And also, like I said, I urge everybody in the Atlanta area to come out to the Rage Board Wednesday, October the 7th from noon to 12 at the Georgia Capitol.
I'm sorry, but you mean noon to 2?
Ma'am?
Did you say noon to 2?
Noon to 2, 12 to 2 o'clock.
Okay, thank you.
October the 7th, Wednesday. Building CLOB, room 506. I urge everybody to come out. And once again, ATL Raise Up on Facebook.com.
Thank you so much. I know that you just got off work, and we very much appreciate you calling in, and we look forward to seeing you. We'll be there. The Labor Forum will be there on Wednesday. I look forward to meeting you.
Thanks so much.
Take care.
Thank you.
All right, you guys have a great day.
All right, bye-bye. All right, listeners, we've got a few messages from your favorite radio station, WRFG 89.3 FM, and then we have two guests here in the studio, and we'll be bringing them on for our next interview. Please stay tuned.
WRFG 89.3 FM has underwriting opportunities for your business or organization at affordable rates. Your announcement includes business name, location, contact info, and service provided. Please contact the WRFG business office if interested. The number is 404-523-3471.
It takes only 10 minutes, but the effects are long-lasting. We're talking about donating your car to WRFG. In just 10 minutes, you can make arrangements to donate your car, running or not, and within a few minutes, it will be picked up and you'll get a tax receipt. So what are you doing in the next 10 minutes? Pick up the phone and call 404-523-3472. That's 404-523-3472. Or visit WRFG.org.
Welcome back. You're tuned into the Labor Forum here on WRFG 89.3 FM in Atlanta. And we have two guests in the studio, Joel Edwards and Harmel. Go ahead and tell me again. Cody. We just met. Thank you so much for coming to the Labor Forum. Joel is a retired MARTA bus driver. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And I heard from Paul, because you both are MARTA workers, about a story about you two getting arrested a long time ago. Maybe you didn't want that broadcast all over the world.
That's okay.
But my understanding is that you got motivated at a demonstration around the issue of Grady and the drug costs that they were trying to increase at the time, a number of years ago. So I want to thank you for doing that.
You're quite welcome. It's in the name and for the people of Atlanta and all the folks that needs help.
All right. So I see that another sister has just come in. Were you wanting to be interviewed too? Or do you just want to listen?
I can do it.
All right, so folks, it's live radio, and we're always happy to have more people from the community here on the Labor Forum discussing really important issues. Paul and I, over the last several months, I should let you both know, have been having a series of discussions with different people in different communities, in particular about the impact of these big sports stadium deals, which tear down valued institutions like they did with the two historic Black churches for the Falcon Stadium, about how money, public money, gets put into these kind of big projects, whether it's sports stadiums or other kind of developments that very wealthy corporations or individuals plan to get a lot of money out of, and that community interests get shoved aside or even cut. And so in continuing that kind of a discussion, there's been so much talk about what's going on in DeKalb County. And what prompted this really was the fact that a deal got put together with Arthur Blank that again is going to cost DeKalb citizens money and is for a soccer practice field. And here's Arthur Blank, billionaire, and yet DeKalb County citizens, who I understand from reading the newspaper, have suffered egregious cuts in education and so many social services. There you go. So that's why I heard from Paul about your Restore DeKalb organization. So I'm going to ask you first, I guess, what that group was formed to do and what your take on this situation with how money gets spent here in DeKalb County. So do you want to start, Joe?
Well, I'll let Sandra Holmes comment on that, since she's just about in charge of the DeKalb, Restore DeKalb Coalition organization.
Oh, okay.
Well,
Sandra, welcome.
thank you.
Thank you so much for coming on the air.
Thank you. Restore DeKalb is more or less like a group of concerned citizens that are eager and wanting the best for our communities. And we want to make sure that everything that is possible for our communities is given to our citizens. And when it is not, then we're the watchdogs. We get the opportunity to get involved and make sure if it's not done right, we want to make it right. And as you see, there is a lot going on in the DeKalb area, especially in South DeKalb.
Yeah, I'd like actually all three of you to talk about that, because one of the things that's so noticeable is this, and there's so many issues we could talk about. I mean, just so many, and the program will fly by. But one of the issues clearly is this movement to form cities all on the north end of the county. And these people all say it's because of the issues, the problems in DeKalb County. But it's so clear as well that what it does is it robs DeKalb County of funds, and it continues this historic neglect of South DeKalb. So do all three of you live in the southern part of the county?
Yes, we are.
Can you all just each kind of personally talk about something you've noticed or something that aggravated you, that got you involved, that reflects what we just talked about?
First.
Okay.
I think one of the biggest problems is that the misinformation that the citizens are receiving and the information that they do not understand. And on top of that, there's a lot of rental property in the South DeKalb area. So that takes away from those of us that live and love DeKalb County.
I wanted to tell your story.
Yes, let me piggyback on that. DeKalb County, I moved to DeKalb County in 1984 when it was under the direction of Manny Maloof and then Elaine Levitan. And what has happened in DeKalb County due to economic turndown, we've had a lot of, with the dismantling of the apartment complex in Atlanta, Georgia, a lot of the residents were given vouchers to move to Clayton County and DeKalb County. And I think you all know that Clayton County had a problem at one time with folks that were moving in and wasn't paying their fair share of the taxes and messing the county up, and it filtered over to DeKalb County. Now, we have no problem with folks coming over to DeKalb County from other counties, but when you have a city like Atlanta that dismantle the housing project and give folks vouchers to move to other counties, that tells you something. That tells you one thing, that they don't want the less desirables in their city. They're moving them over to another county where we intake the problems of those folks coming in. Now, when these folks come in DeKalb County and they go through the housing authority, there's no training for these folks to maintain housing. So what actually happened was that you had folks moving in middle-class neighborhoods that wasn't maintaining the neighborhoods, and as a result, the middle-class neighborhood is no longer middle class. It has a gumbo effect, a little bit of everything. County government has not done their job. When Vernon Jones took over DeKalb County, one thing Vernon did not do, he did not give the folks on the north side part of the political process, like the mayor of Atlanta, Maynard Jackson, did. And a lot of folks didn't realize that Atlanta had two mayors, Maynard Jackson and Sam Massell, who was the manager of Buckhead. They worked together. Vernon told the folks in Dunwoody to go to hell, and guess what? They went to heaven. They created the city of Dunwoody. Then, when I made a statement at the Board of Commissioners meeting that it was going to have a ripple effect, and guess what? It did. The ripple effect was Brookhaven. Now we got Tucker, and we have La Vista Hills. Now, my thing is that I lived in a black neighborhood all my life until I was 21 years old. Now, with DeKalb County trying to create a city of Green Haven, I do not plan to live in all black county again. One of the things that we don't have in this county, in the south side of the county, is economic development. Economic development sustains the city because you can't depend on the homeowners to pay taxes to sustain the city. You know, because if you do that, you have a exit of people leaving DeKalb County. Now, diversity is the answer. Now, with the people on the north side trying to create a city, what we should do is try to work together to sustain the county as a whole. That's just like saying I have a used car and the car is not working, so I'm gonna go get a new car. No, try to fix it first, and if you can't fix it, then do what you have to do. But try to fix it first. And we have not had the folks on the north side to come in and say, okay, we're gonna work with you and try to get this situation resolved.
So can I ask you, Harmel, have you got an issue that you want to talk about on the radio in regard to all the things that, the very differences between the amount of money the schools get? There's just so many issues that there's a disparity between the south side of DeKalb and the north side.
Well, my name is Harmel Cody. I am a child advocate. I'm actually an attorney. I work with children in DeKalb County, especially those that are in the juvenile justice system. And what I have noticed is that the amount of crimes that we have, and in order for us to have economic development in the South DeKalb area, we need to improve the schools because everything that are good stem from education, good education. If you have good school system, then you are going to have economic development. Your property values are going up, and people are really going to be able to come into the environment and bring stores there because through their feasibility studies, they would see that if your schools are improving, kids are graduating and whatnot, then they will want to invest in your environment because they know they will have return on their investment.
I'm going to ask you all a question because we have sort of a point of view here on the Labor Forum. Mm-hmm. Our point of view is that workers, from whether they are unionized and therefore have some protection on the job and have perhaps at least a living wage. I'm a retired auto worker, and I worked for 30 years for General Motors. I have a pension, I have health care. These are the things I have as a result of belonging to a union. And because this is a program that talks about worker issues, obviously we're always examining how the unions and how just having a good job is under attack from every which way, from whether it's the corporations and your own personal boss, the company that employs you, the government, the state government, the federal government, on every hand. And so we always take the position that we are for workers having all the human rights they should have, which is a good job, education, healthcare, clean environment, safety, et cetera, et cetera. So when I hear you talking about the situation in DeKalb, and particularly in South DeKalb, and the way that the city of Atlanta and the government here in Atlanta this is my opinion, is such a handmaiden, does whatever the corporations want to have done. So we see the gentrification of our neighborhoods in Atlanta, where people who are paid lower wages, whether they own a home or rent a home, are being pushed out of the city. High taxes maybe pushes them out of the city, or as you said, the destruction of public housing and low rent housing here in the city. And then that creates a situation for other counties, and what it essentially is it takes this attack on poor people and workers and just tries to shuffle us from one place to another. So I am wanting to know if in your analysis of the situation in South DeKalb in particular, and the impact that you feel your neighborhoods have gotten from what Atlanta did, how you see us coalescing so that we are directing our attack, we're directing our focus on the entities that are actually causing this problem. Any of you have a comment on what I just all said?
Well, I think the lack of leadership in DeKalb County somewhat brought about this sort of issues that we have currently. You have someone that in charge of $1 billion industry, which is government services, but however never run or never work anywhere, to be a manager anywhere. It's almost giving $20 billion corporation, as you say, you know what, we want results right here, right now, and they don't know what to do. And when you have a lack of competence, inexperience, and not having good support in terms of having individual to advise them properly, then this is what you have. The result that we have in DeKalb County is that you have no leadership, whether it's from the Board of Commissioners or the CEO himself. And granted, when all these issues with corruption that occur with all this happened, no one really understood. The governor went and picked up the least experienced individual on the Board of Commissioners to put him on there. Yeah, I understand the sort of ripple effect because he was the presiding officer for the Board of Commissioners and whatnot, and so he was the second in line. However, I think somewhat he was set for failure because he didn't have the skill set and the knowledge to run a county budget. Being a Board of Commissioners, a member, it's an easy job. However, when you're running a whole county that's have a budget over $1 billion and up, then you're dealing with a lot of money, a lot of issues. And you really need to know how to wrap your head around all of that. Now, recently, the union came to, I believe it was for the individuals that pick up the trash and sanitation workers and whatnot. Well, why they came is because the administration would not speak to these workers. Then they felt they had no other recourse but to become unionized. Now, whether that happened or not, I'm not up to date on that issue, but to me, that was the only recourse that they had, which they could have prevented that from happening in the first place, just to have a sense of communication with these people. And that's the same issues that we have with the cityhood. The leadership would not speak to North DeKalb. And since Lee May came on board, I believe that he had drawn a wedge between North DeKalb and South DeKalb because of the position that he had left on field. He refused to resign. Then he always felt that the commissioners representing North DeKalb were playing politics. While he could have just resigned the day after he became CEO, which was giving us an opportunity to fill the position through the electoral process. However, he didn't do that. And therefore, for 2 years, he drew that wedge and it became deeper and deeper. Now they can't even work. What is so estranged from each other. So, but now you have a majority Black commissioners that run things in DeKalb County. However, they don't even know how to run their personal lives, obviously. So, go ahead.
Let me say, speak on that for a minute. Dr. King sacrificed his life for the least of those. As we all know, Dr. King was in Memphis, Tennessee, protesting for the sanitation workers.
That's right.
When he died. Now, this is what's hard for me to believe and to take in. Here Dr. King went out and sacrificed life for the minorities to be on the pedestal to the point that they can do for the least of those, whether they're white or black. They're making a difference. And here in DeKalb County, the majority administration is black. Board of Commissioners, south side of DeKalb County, black. If you drive down the south side of DeKalb County, it's in disarray. It's in disarray. Now, the north side is thinking that, that the south side is doing well, but if they come down to the south side and just take a tour on the south side, in the neighborhoods and the houses and the streets and the communities, they'll find out that we're not where we're supposed to be, And it's a shame that they are using Dr. King's name and life in vain to the point that they are not doing what they're supposed to do for the least of those.
So let me, did you want to say something?
Well, what I would like to add to that as well is that not only are our commissioners not stepping to the plate, doing what they could or should do, but our ministers are not. And that is just unacceptable. There could be a big difference. We know that Dr. King went into the churches and the flock of the people were there to hear and listen and learn. But we don't have that option today because everybody is for self. And this is what we have got to get away from if we expect to do better for our people and our children more than anything.
Yeah. Can I start another attack here? All right. So are all three of you members of Restore DeKalb?
Yes.
Okay. So if our listeners out there, that we have, I'm sure many people who live in South DeKalb, have relatives in DeKalb. Many of us have friends in DeKalb, and we certainly have seen the huge headlines that the Atlanta Journal-Constitution and all the articles that the Atlanta Journal-Constitution has done investigating corruption and et cetera in DeKalb County. I have to say again, from my standpoint, when I read the report that Michael Bowers put out, and I saw things about $2.99 for this and a few dollars for that, I am like, this is not my idea of corruption. My idea of corruption is when the power of the very wealthy, a single person or a few single people, have the ability to absolutely override the interests of the majority. To me, that's corruption. When the fact that we supposedly it's one person, one vote, and all those kinds of democratic principles that are talked about, but when somebody like an Arthur Blank comes with a proposal to build a soccer field and have the county help pay for it, and on the other hand, schools are getting cut from their money, roads don't get fixed, housing regulations, about upkeep don't get enforced. We can just go on and on. It doesn't happen. I go, that's to me is corruption. That to me is corruption. It's corruption of the idea that people have a right to expect certain things from their government to do. So, anyone want to comment on this so-called corruption?
Yes. As far as DeKalb County is concerned, the county government is somewhat, in these departments, the head of departments, is somewhat like a family thing. A friendship here, friendship there, and what they do, they have a tendency to give positions to people that they know, even though the people that they know cannot do the job. Okay? The fact of the matter is that if you ride in DeKalb County, you'll see potholes everywhere. You see the grass need to be cut. Trash need to be picked up. We have commissioners that their job is to legislate, to pass ordinance, and the problem is that they're not enforcing the ordinance. And to me, it's sad. I think something needs to be done, and with the problem we have in DeKalb County now, and I think that all these public officials, we need a reorganization in DeKalb County, period. We need a cleansing of DeKalb County from the head down to wherever. And when Mike Bowers said that DeKalb County was rotten to the core, I'm in belief of that, because it starts from the head. If the leadership is bad, everything else below is going to be bad. So if that means that the leadership got to go, so be it. If that means that we have to get rid of all these elected officials to get DeKalb County to where it's supposed to be, so be it. Because the taxpayers won't do it. As a matter of fact, we had a 5th district election about a month ago, and we have 144,000 folks in that district. We only had about 45 to 5,000 folks that showed up to vote. So that shows you the interest that people have in DeKalb County. I have never lived in a county that's so complex as DeKalb County. And the problem is that I think that we're so compassionate, and which we shouldn't be, because our quality of life is at stake here in DeKalb County. If things don't move forward, our investment that we make, which is one of the biggest investments that we make, is buying our homes in DeKalb County, if that is underwater, where are we then? That's just like your 401k being dissolved because of the fact that interest rates are going up and your money's being dissolved through whatever means. It's the same thing with county government. If they are not doing what they're supposed to do.
So maybe just like one more minute for each one of you if you want to make a comment. And I think what we want to maybe see at this point is what solutions do you have, and what is your organization doing to both educate and mobilize people to essentially make DeKalb County the county you want to live in? I'll start with you, Helen.
And you actually said the word education. We focus on educating the community, and that's the primary thing. If they don't understand, then they won't do. And we need cooperation from everyone in all aspects of the county to make it work.
Go ahead.
And, you know, interestingly, there's a silent majority in DeKalb County that should get involved into the processes to move the county forward, but step back because perhaps they are afraid of ramification because we have a history and a culture in DeKalb County. You shouldn't be involved too far into the politics. But one of the things as a former employee of DeKalb County I've realized is that unless people move forward as a group, we can't do it as individual, as a group. Pick the place, move all of these people that we have on the Board of Commissioners and get them out and get new blood into this, the board. We'll never have the DeKalb County that we hope to have. Basically, I believe that new election would come eventually. Get rid of these people, get new blood in there, and then we can move forward toward a cleaner DeKalb.
And after Joel, if one of you would give contact information, and then we have to close the program in like 30 seconds.
Yes, I have only one thing to say. Wake up DeKalb County.
All right, so do you all have a website or a Facebook or all that kind of forms of communication now? Telephone number for people to get in touch with Restore DeKalb.
Well, to get in touch with Restore DeKalb, you can contact Viola Davis, or you can contact Joel Edwards. My email is joeledwards2129@yahoo.com. And I am a member of Restore DeKalb.
I want to thank all three of you for being here on the program today and for presenting your point of view about a situation that very clearly is something that will stay in the news and stay on all of our minds as we try to move forward so that we have what every work person needs: a decent life, decent job, decent housing, decent education and health care. Exactly. That's what we're all about here at the Labor Forum. Exactly. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. And that's our program for today. Please tune in again next Monday, 4 to 5, here at WRFG 89.3 FM.
We will not bow down to racism. Yeah. We will not bow down to injustice. We will not bow down to exploitation. What you gonna do? I'm gonna stand. I'm gonna stand. I'm gonna stand. I'm gonna stand. I just can't tolerate racism. I just can't tolerate injustice. I just won't tolerate exploitation. What you gonna do? I'm gonna stand. I'm gonna stand. I'm gonna stand. I'm gonna stand.
WRFG Atlanta, 89.3 FM, your station for progressive information. WRFG provides a voice for those who have been traditionally denied access to broadcast media through the involvement of a broad base of community elements to guarantee that access. In the utilization of the Foundation's facilities and in its programs, the following communities will receive first priority: those who continue to be denied free and open access to the broadcast media, and those who suffer oppression or exploitation based upon class, race, sex, age, creed, disability, sexual orientation, or immigrant status.
From Pacifica, this is Democracy Now!
What happened is that a plane arrived and in several ways